I mean, you must know that there are so many revisionists. Some people I do respect in some sense, but I think they have ulterior motives, like people like Ralph Ellis, who will go out there and say that, well, yeah, of course there was a historical Jesus. He was from Syria. His name was King Yissus, and he was the third Syrian king of, and it's like, what? You know what I mean? Like no, I think it's very complicated sort of historical jumps that have to be made and some reading into things. And I don't think it really follows. I think you're quite correct. Okay, so just wanted to interject that. These are people that would be, so these historical revisionisms, the historical um, Jesus, some will say, yeah, there is a historical Jesus, but it's not the Jesus from the Bible. It's King Jesus from Syria, or it's actually King Arthur, or some, stuff like
Right,
that.
or some, right,
Oh,
right,
okay.
and that brings us to what I covered in a companion book to the Apocryphal Jesus, which is on Jesus mythicism myth.
Mm.
Because Jesus mythicism is another category in the historical Jesus studies. Um, as much it is not respected academically, it is very popular.
Okay.
So mythicism would say that mythicism is also tied up in what's known as the pig and copycat concept. It's tied up because one would say, yeah, just that. There was someone named Jesus, and then around him was built this myth, and myth was built out of bits and pieces of pagan mythology.
Okay.
That's a basic way to look at it there. And then you have something that is not very popular, but it's definitely making some inroads, which is known as the celestial Jesus view.
Right.
And this is funny because this is wanting their cake, wanting to eat it, and wanting to not gain any weight from it. So what they'll say is, yes, everything that the New Testament records did really happen to an actual Jesus, but it didn't happen on earth. It happened in some celestial realm.
Oh, yeah, it's a Christ consciousness type thing, right? Yeah.
Right, yes, right.
Christ is only a consciousness, yeah.
Right, I mean, it's obviously unsustainable because the New Testament as a whole, or even if you just want to look at the writings of Paul, I mean, my goodness, born of a woman, born under the law, that's from Paul. And then I had one of these celestial Jesus people say, well, yeah, it says born of a woman, but it doesn't say born of a woman on earth.
Oh, my God.
It's like, well, wow, so you mean they actually had to write those words? By the way, when I say born of a woman, I mean an earthly woman who lived on the planet Earth. I mean, really?
Yeah, right. Well, like Mary was, I think, perfect in some ways, but, there's no denying that, I mean, I don't understand that because, in interpretation, hermeneutics can only go so far, and these people just, it seems like they haven't really read the Bible, or they've only read bits and pieces, because if you're going to take the Bible as true, then you have to accept that, yes, that did happen, that did on earth, like you said, like some people say, all of Christ's actions are basically allegories for how the oil of the sacrum chakra travels up to 33 vertebrae of the spine and so on. I don't know what category those people would fall under, but I don't know. I'm very much if people really did their research, like you're saying, and looked at the concordance of thousands of texts that refer to a historical figure, Jesus Christ, independently. It is the most verifiable thing almost in the historical record. And you have, and then in the same breath, those people who will doubt the historicity of Jesus Christ will in the same breath tell you that Thoth the Atlantean The Emerald, really, you got to pay attention to him and what he says, or Odin in the Norse mythology, because, and it's like, well, what's the history? What did you think they existed? I mean, so it's all right. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just very passionate.
No, it's fine. No, I'm glad to hear that. And the fact is, I would imagine there's a reason why the year after Jesus died, no one claimed he never even existed. And I would imagine there's a reason why a decade afterwards no one claimed that, and a century and a millennia and a half. I would imagine there's a reason why it took a full 2 millennia for someone to wake up in the morning and say, "By George, I've got it. He actually never even existed."
Wow, yeah. Isn't
okay,
that, yeah.
And what you have now is every few decades, someone wakes up in the morning, gets a crazy idea into their head, and publishes a book, and it makes a splash, and it's thoroughly discredited, and then it happens again and again and again. So, for example, in 2014, Michael Polkovich published a book where he says, hey, I read a lot of authors from the first century, and none of them mentioned Jesus. Okay, well, for one, he was reading various authors. I mean, people writing about botany and medicine and playwrights.
Right.
People who would have literally no reason for bothering to write about Jesus.
Sure.
And so he says he read 126 texts and he didn't find Jesus in them. And when I read that, I thought, well, that's really strange, because I had conducted my own research, and within the first 2 centuries AD, I chronicled right around 237 texts that reference Jesus.
Wow, yeah.
And that's actually, I have a list, that's an appendix in both of these books. Wow. And I thought, well, that's strange that he couldn't find them, and I did. I mean, so what is the issue? The issue is that on the one side, we have just historical facts, citations, and on the other side, you have an activist.
That's right.
Right, okay, so another thing that happened is Raphael Lataster, he's one of the Celestial Jesus authors. Okay, and now I was personally interacting with him on Facebook. And one day I go to make my next comment to his reply to me, and guess what? The Facebook page was locked, and all the comments were deleted. Now, little did they know that when I have discussions like that, every single day I'll take my comments and I'll take their replies and I'll save it in a Word document.
Yes.
So guess what? I have that discussion and I put it in the book.
Oh, good. Wow. Nice. Well, hey, there you go. I mean, it's
let that be a lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So this guy, he was, he's saying he's sort of a cosmic Christ type person where, I call that almost the psychedelic revival Christ. Because I had a bunch of friends who were, and this was before I came to accept Jesus for what he said he was, and I was interested in a lot of different traditions, and all these things, and I went at one point to the artist Alex Gray. And he does these very interesting kind of psychedelic artwork of bodies and spirit. A lot of, if you saw his work, you'd know it.
Yes.
He, at the very end of this exhibit, was at the time it was in Hell's Kitchen. Now he has some sort of cult in upstate New York, but I think it's called Cosm Gallery. Anyway, he had this thing, and it took him a long time to do. It was called the Cosmic Christ, and it's basically, Christ is some sort of sitting in some sort of, meditative state. And you know what I think a lot of that comes from is a lot of that imagery goes back to Hermann Hesse and Siddhartha. The Siddhartha book, which people don't know, they might have seen the movie with Keanu Reeves or whatever. They think it's about the Buddha, and to some extent it is, but a lot of people have argued that, oh, that was actually Jesus Christ's lost years, spent in India. He learned it all in India, don't you know? And then he came back, and it was such a shock to the Hebrew people at the time for someone to be claiming to be a Messiah that it's just they get the whole they form a conclusion, and then they set out to prove that conclusion instead of objectively just measuring and doing what scholarship should do. And I find this that to be an attribute of a lot of the rabbinical sort of Judaic tradition, is that they have a lot more respect for scholarship, and this might come from the Talmud, where it's basically footnotes upon footnotes of things and all that, and the respect for the written word. But I find the scholarship to be much better coming, for the most part, coming out of those schools of thought.
And in fact, when you look at Jewish sources such as the Talmud, I mean, none of them presume Jesus never existed. Rather, they affirm that he did exist, and they question, for instance, they'll call him a sorcerer. Well, what does that tell me? Well, that tells me that he was doing very unique and unusual things that I would call miracles. They have to admit as much, but they question the source of his abilities. And now the thing about the missing years, first of all, there are no missing years. The New Testament says Jesus grew in wisdom and stature. I mean, look, I love Jesus, but honestly, a daily journal of his entire life, like, well, Jesus this morning, he woke up, he rubbed his eyes, he washed his face, then he hammered a nail. I mean, come on. Like John says, the world would be filled with books, okay?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, when you mentioned research, yeah, indeed, researchers have literally gone to places like India and asked in all these old monasteries, and the monk searches, what are you talking about? We don't know anything about this, But how about a segue here? Because you're making me think about how you mentioned earlier how you've never seen anything like it. Like, basically, the going against and turning inside out, upside down, and backwards.
Yeah, it seems to be a recent phenomenon. Yeah, it seems to be a recent phenomenon of postmodernism, I would say.
I would say it's a little difficult to gauge that, because sometimes we're really impressed by something that's hot on the web, and then we don't realize that it's ancient. For example, if you look at the story of the Greek mythology of Prometheus, I think that's very close to the Satan character, right?
Yes.
Because you have Zeus sort of oppressing humanity, and against Zeus's will, Prometheus steals fire and gives it to humanity, along with other high tech. And so he's seen as the heroic figure who rebelled against God, and he's seen as bringing enlightenment under the symbolism of the fire, right? So
very good point.
Yeah, and then you have, like you already alluded to quite heavily and rightly, the Gnostic texts, which are just straight up satanic in the sense of taking what God does in a copy but corrupt manner. And so that brought my thinking to the other issue we talked about in private, which is, why on earth is it that aliens would travel across the vast distances of the universe to tell us that the Bible is not true?
Oh, yeah. Wow. Hey, good point.
It's like, really? That's what you have to say to me.
So let's segue there. Go ahead.
Because obviously then you have those people who claim that Jesus was an alien.
I was about to say, exactly.
That's as easy to do as anything else. You might wake up and think, I know, I'll write a book about this because I just invented it.
Yeah.
But one thing that you do find is the UFO alien contact literature is literally saturated with anti-Christian sentiments.
Really? I mean, I caught that a little bit. I haven't really explored it too much, but I've heard this from a couple different people, and I've basically found that to be true.
Okay, well, let me give you the rundown, okay? any and every supposed message from aliens will break down into three things. They'll say, hey, you humans are destroying the earth, you humans are fighting each other over government and politics, and you humans are fighting over each other over religion. Okay, and those three things are true, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't have a problem granting them that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So their solution is form a one-world government and then form a one-world religion that'll view the earth as the Gaia, the basically a living goddess. Mm-hmm. And there you go. So the aliens are here to tell us, establish a one-world religion and a one-world government.
Yep.
It breaks down to that, basically.
And that's right out of, some science fiction books like, Childhood's End, Arthur C. Clarke. And Arthur C. Clarke, I believe, was a very high-ranking Freemason.
Let me tell you, Childhood's End it is mind-blowing. I mean, it is so ahead of its time. It even has aspects of the ancient alien claims in there.
Yes.
It has it all.
Yeah, really.
I mean, it's really mind-blowing. And so what you end up with is, well, let me ask you this. Okay, let's say that an extremely high-tech spacecraft lands in front of my house right now. Mm-hmm. Why should I think, hey, high-tech equals high spirituality?
Right.
I mean, if aliens met one of our astronauts, would they say, hey, because you're qualified to run a spaceship, therefore you must know a lot about God? Right. I mean, I don't get it. No, I just really don't understand that connection.
I don't either. I think what we've had is people are, nature abhors a vacuum, and there's a thirst. There's always a hunger and a thirst for God. What does Augustine say? My heart is restless until it rests with you, my Lord. And that's basically it. I mean, people don't have a sense of grounding or foundation of being or of anything anymore. So everything is subjective, and what they want to hear is this sort of, I think, this positive, happy McDonaldization, Disneyfication of Jesus Christ. Like he was always happy, man. He was a hippie. He was, like all these sort of, and that Jesus is okay, but the one that said, I'm going to divide you from your family, no, they don't want that one. That's negative, don't you know? That no, we want the positive. No, but you got to understand, there's more to the message. So I just find these people very shallow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you have Billy Meyer. Does that name sound
Yes, I know. John Rasmus has done really good work on Billy Meyer, folks.
So Billy Meyer claims that he literally traveled back in time and had a good old conversation with Jesus. So now Billy Meyer can tell us, oh, this is the real stuff right here that I'm telling you.
Right. And I mean, it still continues to this day. People like that, yeah.
It does. So one thing I wanted to mention, and I'm eventually leading to one thing we wanted to talk about, which is the intersection between the UFO alien issue and the occult.
Yeah.
First, the thing is, if I were to say something like UFOs and aliens, just that statement creates a tremendous mess. I mean, it is such a mess of different topics. Because, for example, if you think about people who claim to channel aliens, then there's no spacecraft involved whatsoever, which is very convenient, by the way.
Right.
And so I would say, well, why is it that people who claim to channel the spirits of dead people and the people who claim to channel aliens, how come they're the same? I mean, they have the same shtick. What on earth is that about? And so not having to actually have interaction with a spacecraft is very convenient, because you can say, hey, I'm in touch with aliens telepathically. So that's convenient. And so you see already, you can have an issue with aliens that has nothing to do with spacecraft, or what we would call UFOs.
Yep.
All right, so those are two different topics already. And then on the alien side, you have abductees, you have contactees, you have experiencers, you have channelers, and so there's all these different issues tied up into it, as well as, if we talk about UFOs now, you have a bunch of issues there. You're talking about secret government spacecraft that are just mistaken for alien spaceships. You have weather phenomena. You generally do have objects that people are seeing, and we have no way, apparently, of knowing exactly what they are. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're from another planet.
Right.
In fact, and so then you get to the inevitable interaction between the issue of aliens and the occult. So let me give you what I think was just a perfect example. Okay. You recognize the name Sean Stone, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so when he was on Jesse Ventura's show, Conspiracy Theory, they did a show where they're traveling to Bigelow Ranch, or AKA Skinwalker Ranch.
Yep, I've heard of it. Yep.
Okay. So this is basically a hot spot of paranormal activity, including sightings of UFOs, right? Something that's flying that people can't identify. Now, on the drive there, they're filming inside of the car, and the car's radio is going bonkers, and you hear this, like, cheesy robotic voice saying, "Get off, true evil, evil, and so evil."
Really?
Yeah, of course, that's the transcription at the bottom of the screen.
Right, right. Interesting.
For all I know, the guys in the next car were using the CB. And
right, exactly, yeah.
It sounded very cheesy, okay? But I'm just telling you, this is what the show is putting forward. Now, why on earth are aliens interested in talking about evil through such a device? Whatever. I don't know. That's how they put it forward. But the most interesting part to me is, well, Sean Stone, it's kind of hard to figure him out, because I know he's well-known and respected in whatever you want to call it, the truth movement or what have you, because he's into theory, conspiracy exposing, and I think he's done some good work there. But I also know that he was asked, well, it was stated to him, well, when did you convert to Islam? And he said, well, I didn't convert to Islam, but that he has accepted Islam. So I don't know if he's involved in some kind of Islamic spiritualism.
I think he
really
is.
know.
Yeah, he wears a Islamic. What is the sword? It's like a very curvy sword. I'm thinking
yes.
You'll see it on a lot of Masonic symbolism.
Right. Yes.
He wears that around his neck as
gotcha.
So yeah.
Well,
I think accepted is actually a little bit of an understatement for him. So. But it's not very popular, so he doesn't go around talking about it very much.
Right. But here's the key. Okay, so they get to Skinwalker Ranch at night, and Sean is just kind of has his head to his forehead, and he's just has his eyes closed, and he's not saying anything. So someone on the crew asked him, "What you got, Sean? What are you doing?" Right? And he says, "Inviting the spirits to come out."
What? Wow.
Yeah.
Nice find. Wow, that's interesting, because people allege that Sean Stone is actually practicing dark occultist. So
I'm just telling you what you can see on the video
TV. Yeah,
that show.
That's interesting. Wow.
And then, well, you know, they film a red dot in the sky that's supposed to be some kind of UFO, and then the narrator says, Sean's ritual pays off.
Wow, really? No kidding.
And so the oddity is, wait a minute, now this is supposed to be a show about aliens from another planet or another dimension, and about UFOs, which are their spacecraft, and Sean Stone is claiming that he's inviting spirits?
Right.
I mean, you see right there, that's why I said this is such a perfect example, because it's like, wait a minute, how do these two things connect? And, well, the two things do connect.
Interesting. I've seen now that ritual that you're talking now. There's another guy figure, very. You've probably heard of him, Stephen Greer. What he does is he does these. UFO field trips, basically, where you pay about $5,000, and what he does what he calls, I forget how he phrases it, but it's something like, you set up a vector that's straight up in your mind, and you're there, and there exists, and you go through a little meditation. Well, that little meditation, I think, is actually inviting, and he straight up admits it, inviting these entities, and that's what I think they are, and that's interesting that they actually showed that on the Conspiracy Theory show. I've only seen a few of those shows, but I should watch more. That's very interesting to me. Wow.
Yeah, in fact, I'm gonna email you the link to the video I put up with those clips on it, because it's
cool.
truly mind-boggling. I mean,
yeah.
Really,
wow.
Really amazing.
And so you're saying that this interaction between UFOs and the occult happens basically that they're not really aliens in the sense of off-planet entities per se. They might be extra or dimensional, interdimensional entities, and would they be jinn or demons by any other name? It seems like that they follow that sort of pattern, and would you believe, is that correct, or what do you think on that?
Oh, I would probably want to speak for a very long time about that, so I'll just break it down to, I don't think there's a simple answer.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because, like I reviewed before, we're dealing with so many categories of phenomena.
Right.
Okay, I mean, I could tell you about a UFO I saw just this year. I mean, it's not a very exciting story, but I saw something in the sky, and I have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, so what is that? Well, it could be many things. Again, for example, people start reporting seeing black triangular UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's aliens. But wait a minute. Then all of a sudden, we find out about the stealth bomber, which is what? It's essentially triangular and it's black.
Yep.
And so that's part of one of the answers. But ultimately, when you discuss this, you get to not the things we can explain, but the things you can't explain. And there is a small percentage of these sightings that no one can seem to explain. And so what are they? Well, we just don't know. We can all jump to the conclusions that we like to jump to, but it's just too broad a topic to simplify it.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot involved. Let me give you a hint at something. Have you heard of the book, The Controllers?
No, I haven't. Tell me about it.
Well, fortunately, it's written long ago enough that I was able to find the ebook version, and I published it on my website.
Oh, wow.
Which means that if you go to the bottom of that page, then you can download it as a PDF and read it. I'm trying to find the author's name right now to give him credit. But basically, the book is about how simply by employing known technology, you can replicate the essentials of the alien abduction phenomenon.
I agree. Yes. Yep.
Okay, and we're talking about an intersection between government ops and the occult and high tech, and I mean it's all in this giant mess of a phenomenon,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and I think. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, so anyhow, I mean, I was mentioning that because it is one of the aspects of it. So let me jump to another really quick, which is that I run across the claims of 4 different people as I was researching this stuff from 3 or 4 different fields of research who all claimed that aliens were actually human beings who were traveling here from the future.
Oh, I've heard that, yeah, right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I found out that, I don't know how popular that view is or when it started, but then that made me think. because the claim was that, well, in the future, of course, we have a lot more high tech, so we don't use our physical bodies anymore, so they deteriorate, and then our skulls would expand and would accommodate a larger brain, and along with our larger skull comes larger eyes, and you get your physical gray alien. Okay. So then I went back to H.G. Wells, who wrote a paper called Man of the Year 1 Million. Okay. And
I like I never heard of that one. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. The illustration that he gives in writing, and as well as that the illustrators did for his article, are what? Well, Man of the Year 1 Million has, guess what? A spindly little shriveled up body and a gigantic head with big eyes.
Really? Interesting.
Okay. So then one of the things I did in the 50 Shades of Grey Aliens book is to get page after page after page after page going, starting from Man of the Year 1 Million all through the earliest golden era sci-fi and fantasy literature and comic books, showing how this basic concept came about, which was initially, yes, this is a future view of what humans would look like, and then all of a sudden it became, well, no, these are actually aliens, and then you kind of go from there.
Wow, you actually untangled that web. That's something that's really quite an achievement. That's what I find really good about your work, is that you're able to follow the threads and the origins of these looks. You know, because a lot of people will say, look at Aleister Crowley's Lam, for example. But you're finding specific examples by people who had the imagination of the entire British Commonwealth and the United States and the Western world, and the imagination. H.G. Wells, I mean, he was wrapped up, I think, in a couple of secret societies. He was putting forth the agenda of, I think, the control system, and he was people consider him a prophet, but he was writing for his class and for his elite sector of people.
I would agree with you there. Yeah.
So you got to work. I mean, I take his work very seriously, and you look at, what he did with Orson Welles and War Against the World, and how there was a little bit of hysteria about that in New Jersey. It's very interesting how prominent of a person he was, and he wrote, I think, things like the New World Order. There's all kinds of rediscovered or sort of manuscripts of Wells where he's just blatantly flat out saying that the rich are going to go underground and they're going to keep and farm people for their blood. And, it's a harvest going on here of the elite societies, and he really is pretty outspoken, and then he becomes such a profound influence on everything that followed him, and that seeds into, like you said, comic books and film and all these different genres, and somehow that informs the imagination of the public in a way that because it has such a strong money and force behind it, and repetition, that people start to believe that that's a possibility, but it's very, like you say, it's very easy to unravel that with if you can find the right historical threads, and I think that's great that you're doing that.